Welcome to the video and welcome to the channel. Who is Vladimir Putin? In this video, we will explore the life of the Russian president and his ascension to power. Vladimir Putin's journey began in the heart of the Soviet Union on October 7, 1952, when he was born in Leningrad, which is now known as St. Petersburg, Russia. His birthplace, a city renowned for its cultural heritage, stood in stark contrast to the austere backdrop of post-World War II Russia. Putin's family was humble, and he grew up in a communal apartment where multiple families shared living space, a common experience during those challenging times. His father, Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin, was a factory worker, while his mother, Maria Ivanovna Putin, took care of the household. It was within this modest setting that young Vladimir learned the values of discipline, hard work, and resourcefulness. As a child, Putin displayed an early fascination with sports and physical activities, foreshadowing his future image as a judo enthusiast and outdoorsman. He began practicing Sambo, a Soviet martial art, and judo at an early age, which not only shaped his physical prowess, but also instilled in him principles of discipline and resilience. Education was paramount in the Putin household. After completing his secondary education, he pursued higher studies at Leningrad State University, where he specialized in law. His academic pursuits marked the beginning of his intellectual journey, a journey that would soon intertwine with his burgeoning career in the KGB, the Soviet Union's main security agency. Education and early career. Vladimir Putin's education and early career laid the foundation for his eventual ascent to power. After graduating from Leningrad State University with a degree in law, Putin embarked on his professional journey. His time at the university not only honed his analytical skills, but also deepened his understanding of the inner workings of the Soviet legal system. It was during this period that he began to develop the critical thinking and decision-making abilities that would serve him well in the future. In 1975, Putin's life took a significant turn when he joined the KGB, the Soviet Union's intelligence and security agency. His service in the KGB led him to East Germany, where he was stationed in Dresden. During this period, he operated under a variety of aliases and conducted espionage activities. His time in East Germany not only exposed him to the intricacies of international intelligence operations, but also allowed him to witness firsthand the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, a pivotal moment in history that marked the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union. Putin's years in the KGB instilled in him a sense of duty, discipline, and secrecy that would shape his approach to leadership in the years to come. His decision to leave the KGB in 1991, as the Soviet Union was undergoing seismic changes, marked the next phase of his life. It was a time when he transitioned from a world of covert operations to the realm of Russian politics. His political ascent. His journey began at the local level, where he worked in administrative roles in both St. Petersburg and Moscow. These early political positions allowed him to gain valuable experience in governance and build a network of influential contacts within the Russian political landscape. Putin's diligence and dedication caught the attention of the then Russian president, Boris Yeltsin. In August 1999, Yeltsin appointed him as the Prime Minister of Russia, a significant step that would eventually lead to Putin's ascent to the presidency. This appointment was in response to the political and economic turmoil that Russia was facing at the time, and Putin's reputation as a decisive and pragmatic leader made him a suitable choice for the role. Putin's leadership as prime minister coincided with a period of relative stability and economic growth in Russia. His policies focused on fiscal discipline, tax reforms, and efforts to combat corruption. These measures helped to stabilize the Russian economy and improve the country's international standing. In December 1999, Boris Yeltsin made a surprise announcement. He resigned from the presidency, appointing Vladimir Putin as a successor, making Putin the acting president of Russia. In March 2000, Putin was officially elected as Russia's president, marking the beginning of a new era in Russian politics. The presidency. One of Putin's immediate priorities as president was to stabilize the Russian economy, which had been plagued by economic crises during the 1990s. His administration implemented a series of economic reforms aimed at improving fiscal discipline, attracting foreign investment, and boosting economic growth. These measures contributed to Russia's economic recovery and increased stability. Putin's presidency was characterized by a centralization of power. He took steps to assert control over the various branches of government and the media. Critics argued that these actions limited political pluralism and curtailed press freedom, raising concerns about the state of democracy in Russia. Another defining feature of Putin's early presidency was the conflict in Chechnya. He took a tough stance on the Chechen separatism, launching military operations to quell the insurgency. The conflict was marked by brutality and human rights abuses on both sides, drawing international attention and criticism. Putin sought to reassert Russia's influence on the international stage during his early presidency. He pursued closer ties with neighboring countries and engaged in diplomatic efforts to address regional and global issues. His administration faced challenges such as the NATO expansion and the Kosovo crisis, which tested Russia's relations with Western nations. In 2004, Putin was re-elected for a second term as president. However, due to constitutional term limits, he was unable to seek a third consecutive term. Instead, he supported Dmitry Medvedev as his successor and served as prime minister from 2008 to 2012, effectively maintaining control over the country. Consolidation of power. Putin's third term was accompanied by a series of constitutional changes and legal reforms. One of the most notable changes was the extension of presidential terms from 4 to 6 years, which allowed Putin to remain in power beyond his initial 2 terms. During this period, there was a notable increase in restrictions on political opposition and civil society. Laws were enacted that placed stringent regulations on non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and imposed restrictions on public demonstrations. Critics argued that these measures curtailed political dissent and freedom of expression. Putin's administration exerted greater control over the media landscape in Russia. Many independent media outlets faced pressure, and some were taken over by pro-government interests. This consolidation of media control allowed the government to shape the narrative and control the flow of information. Putin's third term also saw efforts to rein in the influence of wealthy oligarchs who had amassed significant power and wealth in the post-Soviet era. Some oligarchs faced legal challenges or were required to align their interests with the Kremlin. International relations. Putin's assertive foreign policy stance continued during this period. Russia's involvement in conflicts such as the Ukraine crisis and its support for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the Syrian civil war drew international scrutiny and criticism. Relations with Western nations, particularly the United States and European Union, became increasingly strained. Re-election in 2018. In 2018, Putin was re-elected for a 4th term as president. His continued dominance in Russian politics raised questions about the state of democracy and political competition in the country. International relations. Throughout his presidency, Putin pursued a foreign policy agenda aimed at reasserting Russia's influence on the global stage. He sought to maintain close ties with former Soviet republics and established regional partnerships, such as the Eurasian Economic Union, to strengthen Russia's economic and political position in the post-Soviet space. Ukraine's path to conflict. The Ukraine crisis, which culminated in Russia's annexation of Crimea and ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine, had deep historical and geopolitical roots. It began with Ukraine's desire for closer ties with the European Union, which led to widespread protests in Kyiv in late 2013 and early 2014. Annexation of Crimea. In February 2014, amidst the Ukrainian political turmoil, Russia deployed troops to Crimea, a region with a Russian-speaking majority. A disputed referendum in March 2014 resulted in Crimea's annexation by Russia, a move widely condemned by the international community. Eastern Ukraine conflict. Following Crimea's annexation, pro-Russian separatist movements emerged in eastern Ukraine, particularly in Donetsk and Luhansk. This led to a conflict between Ukrainian government forces and separatist militias. Russia was accused of providing support to the separatists, further escalating tensions. International response. The Ukraine crisis strained Russia's relations with Western nations. The United States and the European Union imposed sanctions on Russia in response to its actions in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict, including the Minsk agreements, have had limited success in achieving a lasting ceasefire and political settlement. Impact on Russia. The Ukraine crisis and subsequent sanctions had economic repercussions for Russia. The country's economy faced challenges, including a decline in oil prices, a devalued ruble, and reduced foreign investment. The conflict in eastern Ukraine persisted, with sporadic ceasefire violations and unresolved political issues, while the situation remained a point of contention in international relations. In 2021, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky started to crack down on Russian-Ukrainian oligarchs in Ukraine. Shortly after, Putin began to deploy large numbers of troops near the Ukraine border. By December of that year, Putin had amassed tens of thousands of troops near the Ukraine border and demanded that Ukraine never be admitted to NATO. On February 24, 2022, after dismissing multiple suspicions by the West that Russia was about to invade Ukraine, Russia launched a full-scale invasion into Ukraine, beginning from the Donbas eastern region. The invasion cost Ukraine the loss of a great deal of territory in the eastern region. In June 2023, Ukraine launched a major counteroffensive in order to gain back some territory. Since the invasion began, Ukraine has managed to take back at least 50% of its territory from Russian control. Economic factors, including global oil prices, sanctions, and economic diversification efforts, played a vital role in Russia's economic stability and growth prospects. The war in Ukraine, coupled with sanctions brought on by the West, has caused a great deal of instability to the Russian economy, causing the ruble to lose as much as 40% of its value. Russia's role in global geopolitics, including its relationships with China and other major powers, would be an important consideration in shaping the country's foreign policy and international influence. Vladimir Putin has been in power for over 2 decades now, with multiple terms as both president and prime minister. His 4th presidential term is set to end in 2024, but constitutional changes will allow him to run for 2 more terms. This means that Putin could possibly remain in power until he's 84. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine continues. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe.